Hello and welcome to the Society for Anglo-Chinese Understanding podcast. This is the fourth episode in our mini-series on Chinese clothing. China is a diverse country and home to 55 officially recognized ethnic minorities. Each has their own distinctive culture and form of dress. Traveling around China, you will often notice local people wearing their traditional clothing. For this episode, to learn more about traditional Chinese crafts and ethnic dress in China, I spoke to Yiran Duan. Yiran is a member of the Bai ethnic group, who originate in Yunnan in southwest China. There are 2 million Bai people, but they still only represent less than half of 1% of China's population. Yiran, please say hello to the listeners.
Hello, everyone. My name is Yiran, and it's been lovely to be here today.
Could you tell us a bit about your background and the work of e-crafts?
So I'm a Bai minority. I grew up in Dali, in Yunnan province, southwestern China. It's a region with a very rich tradition of textiles and craft practices. And my family runs an indigo textile business. And while growing up, feels like there's sort of surrounded by those textile and natural dyes and like indigo dyeing. And through the lot generations in the family, they have been working in this industry. And I guess e-crafts is really kind of extension of that heritage. It's a project that focuses on preserving and interpreting traditional Bai and Yunnan textiles, but also I think it's more about to showcase Chinese diversity culture within the bigger audience in especially Western country. And I feel like when I was moved to London about 11 years ago, I guess long story short, like I was trying to escape who I am and my identity as a Bai minority, and then come to London actually make me realize that how important to tell my own story and tell the diversity of Chinese culture. And I guess e-crafts kind of born in this in 2019 as a kind of natural reason that I want to talk about Chinese culture through crafts. We do a lot Chinese as minority related crafts, workshops, products, and loads of events, and we work with loads of museums and organizations in the UK.
That's really interesting. You said you're trying to escape when you moved to London from Dali. What was it you were trying to escape?
I think because for me, I was born and grew up in Dali, kind of in a very traditional path to a lot of Chinese students, go through all the primary school, high school, and quite tense learning, I guess, through like exams. And I didn't really do any art practice. Not art practice, but I guess I didn't train as a art pathway while I was in the school. And I went to Chinese university. I did Gaokao exam. I was a good student in a way, that very obedient student and a good daughter as well. And when I went to Chinese university, I didn't got to the subject I really want going. And I did 3 months in the university, and I dropped out without telling my parents. That was my first rebellion to my dream pursuing, I guess. But anyway, so I think the whole realization of I really don't want to do an ordinary path like everyone else, that was very strong in my heart. I didn't really know what I want to do at that moment, but I know I didn't want to stuck to a subject that I didn't really want to study and then spend 4 years in the university that I didn't really enjoy. So I tried to talk to my parents, but obviously for them it's really hard to understand. Like I got into a really nice university and I still didn't really satisfy with that. But anyway, so I really want to do some art or creative study. And so at the end, I kind of compromised with my family. So my mom was saying like, you have to continue studying. And I said, okay, but I want to do art instead. So we kind of find the middle point to study abroad. And that's kind of how I ended up in the UK 11 years ago to do my, actually I studied costume degree, theatre art. So I just started fashion as a foundation and then I did theatre as my undergraduate degree.
Can you tell me the story of how you came to set up eCrafts in London?
Yeah, so obviously I did my degree in theatre and especially in costume because I do feel textile and clothing are such a powerful thing that can be told in a story. And doing my theatre degree, I do realize that people underestimate how powerful the clothing and textile can be used for the daily life. And when you're doing a play, the clothing is about the period, is about the society, is about the person's characters, about the person's occupation, and then that's actually still happening in our daily life. So while I was studying, I do realize, because it was quite, how to say, quite white school. It was a very traditional drama school. We did all the Shakespeare and Victorian dress, corset, tailoring. So I learned a lot Western pattern cutting techniques. I did feel quite distant to them, even though I was enjoying the learning journey, but I just felt that culture doesn't really flow in me. So I started to do a little bit kind of Frankenstein style of costume that using indigo dyed clothing to make Victorian dress, and that really caught my teacher's attention. And she was asking me, "Oh, where did you get this fabric?" And I said, "Oh, I actually dyed it myself." And then she was asking me, "Oh gosh, like it's such a beautiful fabric. Can you teach us how to do it?" So my first workshop actually was teaching my university teacher how to do by indigo dyeing. And that really opened the first door, I guess, to make me think, to realize how people like appreciate and the curiosity for handmade textiles in the UK. But also at the same time, I felt there was a gap in understanding. Like people often see Chinese fashion as a mass produced, and also Chinese culture, I guess, is also quite one single cultural source rather than represented in a diversity cultural element. And I guess come from an ethnic minority background. I do have a very long hair, and sometimes people do curious about my outfit as well. So I had a lot like interesting conversation with people, not necessarily just British people, but people from all over the world that want to know more about Chinese culture in, I guess, in a different way. So combining all this experience, I also did my dissertation about Orientalism in theatre, like how costume in film and the theatre in the Western country, how they use Oriental elements to represent Chinese culture. And I do realize, even to nowadays, Chinese culture still being seen a very like monocultural rather than a colorful one. So that's, I guess, kind of pushed me to set up this business when I graduate in 2019, that thought maybe I can be the person that's starting talking about Chinese as a minority, especially I am from that background. So um yeah, that was just a simple idea that using crafts as a like physical embodiment to talk about the Chinese diversity culture.
And what were the first steps in getting eCraft set up? What was the process that led you to where you are now?
I was simply started running workshops across London. I talked to like venues that, "Oh, I can offer workshop here, and maybe you can offer me the venue, and people maybe will buy some stuff here." And I was quite surprised that a lot of people were interested in my stuff. And it was so it was 2019, just before COVID, and I remember the first workshop. I think it was in Charing Cross Library. I don't know if you know, there's like a Chinese library. So I approached to them saying that, "Oh, I'm talking about sharing some Chinese as minority crafts," and they just very happy for me to hiring the space to run workshop. And then yeah, so I kind of just like pop up in different places in London to teach by people's indigo dyeing. And then I do notice though, at the beginning, people are just curious, and people come probably because they're my friends or friends of friends. It was really quite hard to get more people to come. So I realized that it was difficult to marketing it as a workshop. So I went back to Yunnan to do a little bit field research and also documenting some footage, how the indigo dyeing being used nowadays, and talk to loads of craftspeople, especially my family as well and my relatives in the village. And then I started my social media end of 2019 to promote, to explain, I guess, also educate what is Chinese as a minority and who are the Bai people. That really helped, and that I also went to do a lot of markets, and because it was Christmas time, like attract people's attention about handmade items. But so everything seems goes to the right path, but then what happened, we all know, is the COVID. After
Of
6
course, yeah.
I started my business. I guess lucky I was a very small business that time, so I can pivot really quickly. So in 2020, I started off a online class, and that really opened the market for me because people, not just in London, but basically all over the world, they can join my class. So I was shipping things out to people, to like Europe, to America, to even some of them are, I think, all the way to South America as well, and even some Chinese people asked me to learn. It was quite funny. I think that time period, everyone seems like the world is smaller but also bigger because you can't really go anywhere, but also you can just see everyone through your laptop and through a camera. So I really missed home that time. I couldn't go back. And weirdly, is it was not because I thought I would miss the food most, but actually I can recreate the food at my London flat. Not 100%, but good enough to for my craving. But I actually really miss the human touch with my grandma, with my family, like stitching together, gossip together. And that was really strike me that how much I attach to these memories. So I started stitching like kind of circle online, and the people all over the world joined together. And that was the moment I realized what I started, not just about a business talking about Chinese cultural background, but also to use crafts as a powerful tool to unite people together. And the people were saying like that was the most relaxing Zooms meeting they have through the COVID time, and people would just joining and then stitching together, and people would talk about their concerns, their problems, and the craft just become the way to like a universal language to everyone. So yeah, and after COVID, I really kind of got people's attention through the online social media platform, and I started my first studio in Camden, 2021, I think, no, 2022, and then I expanded to my studio because it was as initially was a shared space with other artists, and then I now moved to Northwest London, have my 2-floor studios now. So I feel like it feels really short, like a short amount of time, but actually it's been 7 years since I started
Wow.
my business.
And in terms of the techniques you practice with e-crafts, could you tell me a bit about those, but also how you learnt those practices?
Yeah, a lot of people thought I was trained or I was learning this while I was young, and I must be like the master of the craft or something like that. And I always tell people the story that why I decided to start the business, and I told the idea to my family, especially my mum and my grandma, and they were so shocked, and they were saying like, "You teaching?" Uh, they were not convinced that it's a good business idea. And to myself as well, actually, I mentioned at the beginning that I was trying to escape um, this kind of cultural route, and I was not interested in traditional crafts at all when I was young. And I guess a lot of people go through this phase as well. And a very similar story I heard throughout the teaching that people take things for granted when it's around you, when it's really easy to access to. Um, so I didn't really learn anything, to be honest, when I was young. But there's a saying in Chinese, I don't know if there's a something similar in English, is, um, you didn't sounds maybe a bit weird when you translate it. You didn't eat the pork, but you see how the pig run. So so it's like I didn't really learn, but I do observe and watch my family, doing
Yeah.
things, and, I guess, when you are young, like, observation is really good thing, and it really stick into your mind. Um, and then but I would say when I actually start proper learning the techniques, it I would say it's probably from the university time while I was in UK, because obviously I do learn a lot Western crafts techniques, but combining with what I observed in the house, in the family, I kind of created my own way of practice the traditional crafts. And then every time when I had holiday in UK doing the study, I go back to visit my hometown. And that was the time I actively to learning it consciously in my mind, and also like documenting it, writing down, rather than just, I guess, play it while I was young. And also a lot of techniques are not always taught in a formal classroom setting. They are quite often learned through like repetition, the practice. So maybe grandma was saying something and then I would just like doing it together with her. Like doesn't really necessarily as a class, I would say. And then obviously while in UK, most of the time I go to loads of different crafts workshops that probably run by, like Japanese and African different traditional indigo dyeing. So I also learned like world crafts in the UK, and that kind of the mix combining like traditional methods and with my own ideas. So it's kind of a mix of inherited knowledge and the personal exploration, I would say.
It's really interesting to me that your perspective on this type of work really changed when you were in the UK, when you're so far from Yunnan. Do you think it was just homesickness, or do you think it was something about the environment, or do you think it was something about the what you were studying that changed your perspective?
I would say there's a lot elements, a lot of reason behind. I mean, I was talking a little bit earlier that my upbringing was quite interesting. That I was growing up a foreign Australia, and I always see the cultural diverse from all over the world. But I kind of forget how much how unique my own culture that gave me, and how Yunnan, the land nurtured me, that are able to have all this resource that I can use. And then when I moved to UK, I guess I also learned so much that the crafts really respected in here. And I mean back to hometown, like you know it's hard labor, it's how people earn butter and bread. And um I guess really helped me to understand what my family been doing are really valuable. They didn't really see themselves doing something so incredible, I would like, at least back then. Um, and I really want to help them to realize that, all those craftspeople in the village, what they've been doing, it's amazing thing. But especially, I guess when I was young, I remember family saying like, crafts is dying, like it's not something has a bright future. When I started the business, even my family was not 100% sure about it. They were saying, like in the future, no one's gonna want to learn this old traditional crafts. Um, so they don't really teach young generation like to learn about these techniques and the crafts. So I guess, to see in the UK that a lot, even costumes are handmade, and to see those things, and I was learning about those value of the crafts in the modern society. I really kind of wanted to change the perspective about traditional Chinese crafts as well, especially quite like a lot of time people see them as like old fashioned, like grandma stuff. And or sometimes people seeing it as very prestige, like really far away in the museum, and you can't really access to it. So there's a lot of reason I feel to see Yunnan in a very different way that through crafts. But yeah, I guess, also I guess time passed by. Like, I guess I'm getting older, and sometimes, when you're young, you don't really immediately see them something like see things like valuable or relevant. But also, I think, after leaving and experience a different context, I do see how unique and meaningful these traditions are, and also to see them like how to preserving them, but not like really preserving because obviously a lot of tradition also changing. But I guess to involving them and also I don't really want to representing them, but kind of give the voice back to those makers and creators back to the village. But yeah, I guess Yunnan become a more rather than a land, it become more as a concept in my mind, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that does make sense, and I think that's really interesting. What do you think causes that slightly negative perception of traditional crafts in China and in Yunnan? Do you think it's just the pace of Chinese modernization and like China becoming a very rich country and like older things being slightly looked down on, or do you think there's more to it?
I mean, I probably can talk a little bit more into the especially in the Yunnan perspective. I mean, loads of traditional crafts, uh, they used to be, actually made, in a very slow process, and then quite commonly they will be self-efficient, like you will be actually making for your own family. But when the China opened up, the tourism happening, when the economy grow, those crafts start shifting from a domestic setting to a commercial item. And that really kind of changed the how to say the process of making things. For example, like natural dye is much harder to make money in terms to selling it as a commercial item because it's the longer time, the longer growing process, the dyeing process is longer, is more expensive, and there is chemical dye that is more accessible and cheaper. So a lot of crafts just shifting from using traditional method to cheaper and quicker method. I mean, to be honest, why not? They have to
Yeah,
make a living, and tourism doesn't really care about the if it's a natural dye or chemical dye. Um, that really, I guess not not break, but I guess disrupt a little bit of the traditional craft development. But lucky thing is, recent years, I think people do talk a lot about traditional Chinese crafts. I guess the most popular term now is the fei yi, the intangible cultural heritage. And then people try to revive those traditional crafts. Um, but I think through the economic growth that I guess obviously the profit driven a lot traditional farm rather than using grow dyeing material, they probably will grow like agriculture crops instead. So it is a quite big topic, but I always saying that sometimes not really the technique lost, but also the environment. For example, there is type of fabric that called firegrass linen. The technique still exists. Like people still like people in their 30s, 40s still know how to make it with linen fabric. But the problem is the land it doesn't grow firegrass anymore, and because all the firegrass land has been used to housing or something else, and that really kind of disrupt the crafts. So I would say like sometimes people so focus on the technique, but actually there's more to that. There is obviously ecological systems. There is economy, like we mentioned earlier, like how people need to make money and how the traditional crafts make money for those people. I mean, tourism obviously is a big to the crafts development, especially in Yunnan, because that is basically how the province making money is through the tourism. And I mean, to be honest, I'm the benefit of this, so I'm not gonna criticize it a lot because I mean, without tourism, I'm probably not able to come to study in the UK.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier that you're a Bai person. That's your ethnicity. Who are the Bai people and what distinguishes Bai culture?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, when we're talking about Bai, we probably need to start with about ethnic minority concept in China.
Yeah,
Um,
that'd be great. Thank you. If you
yeah,
could explain that.
because I realize not a lot of people familiar with that. So there's officially 55 ethnic minority groups in China recognized. And actually in Yunnan province there's 25. So that's quite a lot number. And that's probably why Yunnan is such a great place to start talking about ethnic minority culture. So, but actually those are quite, how to say, um, big group. So each ethnic minority group also have subgroups underneath as well. So for example, like Miao people, there's like hundreds of subgroups underneath, and the Yi people have like, from 70 to 80s, and then Bai people, there's 20, 30 different Bai people as well. So actually, we are talking a quite big diversity of ethnic minority culture. So Bai people are one of China's recognized ethnic minority groups and primarily live around Dali in Yunnan. And I would say Bai culture is very closely connected to nature, community, and craftsmanship. There's a strong emphasis on aesthetics in like everyday life, whether that's architecture, textile, or festival. And they're always, traditions reflect our balance between simplicity and the beauty. We did a exhibition talk about Bai people's like believe everything has spirits, and we have loads of traditional festivals. Like what we're wearing is like traditional shirt and a vest and with an apron, and we always have like bamboo basket carry as a backpack, and like loads of, and we have like loads of different religions in the Bai people as well. The one thing people might famous know about is Benju. So it's Benjuism, and it's slightly different to Buddhism, Confucius, and Taoism. But what interesting thing is Bai people combine all the religions together. They just very adaptable, I guess. That's what one way to put it. We are very functional. Like I think even the gods in the Bai people's mind, we have like hundreds of gods. There's a type of print called the Jiama print, and there's like crying gods. There's like toilet gods. There is even have a gods for like making a good dive at. So, so I think Bai people is very adaptable because throughout history, I mean, there was a Nanzhao kingdom, Dali kingdom, before Yunnan be part of China. We conquered by Kublai Khan, and so we have to be adaptable to live in a very central hub location for trade as well, because Silk Road, like Tea Horse Road, goes through there. So yeah, I guess Bai people throughout history has been a very interesting. We're quite famous for very good at business. I guess that probably in my blood as well.
Well, I'm glad you were able to manifest that part of your identity as well in London. And could you describe Bai clothing? And you mentioned about Bai aesthetics. What do you mean by that?
Um, I mean, like I said, Bai people does have a lot of subgroups, and each Bai people in different places have a slightly different variation on their clothing. But quite commonly, we have a headdress, and the headdress can be simple as like a towel wrapped around, or can be very elaborate that have a silver beads. And we have one most famous Bai headdress is called Fenghua Xueyue, which is a four elements that in Dali, which I guess is the wind, the flower, the snow, and the moon, and it's representing through just by one headdress. And we quite commonly have very like bold color palette and on the embroidery. On the aprons, we have the embroidery on the back. We have silverware as well. Silver is quite important thing for Bai people. We have silver bracelet and a silver. It's called sangshen or sangshu. As a side opening on the vest, you are hanging a silver chain, and that chain also representing your like kind of life status. The chain can go longer when you kind of get married, become a mother, and become a grandma. And I would say a lot of things are quite symbolic as well. For example, we have the hat. One of the headdress is a rabbit in a Jianchuan County for Bai people, and there's like a hat that is symbolize the fish, and the silver balls are symbolize the fish roe. So it's for the fertilizing, like symbolize the fertilizing for women. So it has been, I think, the Bai clothing. It's very again diverse and a big wide range of items that we can talk about. Yeah, I'm really not good at describing the textile, I think, without physically holding them. But hopefully one day, like people can see it and touch it in person, because I do feel textile and clothing, you can feel the warmth when you touch it, because when people are spending hours and days and months, even years of time stitching it, you do feel it, the human touch, and you kind of, it sounds a bit spiritual, but I feel like you do, how to say, see the person, you can see the person behind the clothing. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I don't know if I misheard. Did you say there's a rabbit hat?
Yeah, there's a rabbit hat for Bai people as well. That's supposed to be representing the smart of the rabbit.
But is it like made out of rabbit fur, or does it look like a rabbit?
It looks like a rabbit.
What, like with rabbit ears, or?
Yeah, with the rabbit ears, exactly.
Oh, wow.
With the fur as well. I will send you the picture later on.
I will definitely include a link to that in the show description, so anyone who wants to see the traditional rabbit hat can find out. Because I'm imagining like bunny ears, like on top, like
Yeah, it is.
I don't know,
It is pretty much like that.
but made out of real rabbit. Wow. What's the significance of those items of clothing? Are they all practical, or is there an element of identifying yourself, or what's the role of these accoutrements?
Um, I mean, obviously, for example, the headdress obviously now is quite elaborate and is quite showy, but back to old days, it would just be towel wrapped around on your head. And then your long like braids will be holding up the towel. So when you're working in the farm, in the fields, it kind of give you a protection from the sun, and it can absorb your sweat when you're doing like farming work. And apron, I feel like our clothing, traditional clothing, are very practical. The apron, normally the middle bit is not embroidered, so it can get dirty, but even for apron, we put a beautiful embroidery on them on the edge. Yeah, and I guess the bamboo basket, you can just literally, you can put a kid in the basket when you're working. I was actually sitting in the bamboo basket while I was young, so I do really appreciate the function of that.
You've been in the basket.
Yes.
Can I ask about the role of color in this clothing and this craft? The word bai in Chinese literally means white. And from what I understand, the color white has a special significance in Bai culture. And please do let me know if I've misunderstood something there. But I can also see that a lot of your work uses that really striking indigo blue you've described.
Yeah. I mean, Bai people, actually, the name of Bai as minority are relatively new, I guess, compared to the history of the Bai people. Like I mentioned, the 55 as minority was officially, how to say, like published when the Republic of China established. So back to old days, Bai people doesn't really call themselves Bai. We actually call them we call ourselves like Mingjia. So basically just like normal people, like compared
Yeah.
to superior, we are the normal people. But we do have quite a like tight connection with the color of Bai. We do think Bai is the the purest color, its clarity and its connection to the nature. But at the same time, the indigo blue is also very significant because in Yunnan you have very blue sky and you have the big lake, and it's all like the blue we sometimes reference to the sky, the lake, the nature as well. And the indigo dye itself, because it's such a natural process and the color has this depth and the variation, and it's never really like completely uniform, which makes each piece is really unique when you're working with like indigo dyeing. So the white and the blue is kind of like the clouds and the sky, the contrast in the in the nature. But also I feel like it reflects both in identity and the process. White as this cultural symbol as a Bai people, but blue indigo as this something deeply tied to craft and labor. And that's why eCrafts has been very passionate using this two color in our branding.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really interesting. Can you tell me more about that process of indigo dyeing and how you adapted it for London?
Because indigo dyeing itself is quite big topic, but obviously indigo dyeing not just exists in Yunnan in China, but also in loads of places in the world, such as Indonesia, India, Japan, Africa, South America, so many places. Even in the UK, Europe has have long history with indigo dyeing. So the indigo sort of plants in Britain is called woad. And there's like over 200 different species of indigo out there in the world. It is quite incredible process doing indigo dyeing because it is one of the oldest dyeing method in the world. And I guess that's another thing I find people forget those natural dyeing process. We actually only had about 100 years of chemical dyeing in our history, but for thousands of years of using natural dyeing materials. However, people don't really know how natural dye works, like how can we get color from the nature? But human has been obsessed the pursuing of color for centuries and centuries. Um, and the indigo dye is one of the beautiful one, I think. I mean, also it does involve a lot dark history as well. But if we just focus on its in Yunnan part, in also southwest China, we believe butterfly discovered the indigo because it's all about oxidization. If we look into through like science perspective, it's quite incredible how human discovered the indigo dyeing, because indigo is basically a plant. Well, it's a big term, umbrella term for different plants, and the leaves is green. It's kind of like a basil leaf. But how can we know that leaf can dye blue? It's pretty extraordinary. And to making an indigo dye vat, you're actually creating a chemistry reaction in there. You have to using lime powder, which is the like limestone, and also we kind of depends on the recipe, but you can use a fructose sugar, you can use rice wine, you can use all sort of things to create the dye vat. But the dye vat is actually green. And then when you put the fabric into the dye vat and take the fabric out, the fabric will start oxidization in the air because the oxygen, and then turn from green to blue. So it's pretty much like magic. If you haven't done it before and it's your first time, you will feel like, how come that fabric just suddenly changed the color in 10 minutes,
Yeah.
in 10 seconds? And how human, back to old time to discover the whole chemistry is obviously, like, I think different country might have a different story, but apparently in Yunnan that we believe two guy called Ge Er Xian. Basically, these two guys are the god of indigo dyeing. They were so frustrating. They don't know how to make the dye vat work. So they were drinking rice wine, having a conversation. They got so drunk and accidentally spilled the rice wine into the dye vat. And next day, it worked. So apparently, these two guys now we have to stick them onto the dye vat. Otherwise, the dye vat is not going to work. So yeah, even indigo has such a beautiful story. But like I said, in the world history of indigo dyeing, there's a lot, slavery and stuff involved as well. But there's a lot dark side behind indigo.
Of
But
course, yeah.
yeah.
More generally, do you think clothing has an important role in the way China's ethnic minorities express their identity?
I would say absolutely. I think I did mention how powerful clothing can tell a story, but also, clothing is one of the most immediate and visible ways that identity is expressed. And for many ethnic minorities in especially Southwest China or just in China general, I guess clothing not just a pretty thing, it's not like a fashion, but also carries information like about region, community, and even personal history. So it's not just about aesthetics. I think it's about storytelling, belonging, and continuity as well. So quite commonly, the mother will start making the wedding dress for the daughter when the daughter was born. So it's like kind of passing down the story and the love and protection from the family. And actually, we are doing an exhibition for London Craft Week this year as well, and the last year, that how we express, the clothing is not just something we wear, but it's something that um that can be passing down in the generation, and it contains a lot um love and information, knowledge in the clothing as well.
What does your buy clothing mean to you?
I actually wear more ballet clothing in London than I was in Yunnan, to be honest, which I
Really?
found it quite fascinating. Yeah, I guess because in Yunnan, not that many young generation wears it every day. Like grandmas and aunties, they wear every day still. But younger generation, I mean, once you get used to the comfort of jean and t-shirt, it's really hard to get back to wear traditional clothing every day. It does have a lot layers and a lot restraint in your body. Um, but I think for me, wearing it in Yunnan and in London does give me a different experience. We commonly wear it in Yunnan when there's a festival or ceremony thing happen, but also wearing in the UK. Um, I guess it's for me to tell people who I am and for me to remember who I am. Um, and obviously, I'm not wearing them every day like my grandma or auntie, but every time I wear them, I do feel a sense of belonging and connections to who I am and to, even though Yunnan is far away, but I feel like I brought a little piece of Yunnan to London as well. Um, and so I think I remember one day I was wearing the Bai clothing. Sometimes I do worry that people think I'm cosplaying or something, but actually on the tube, someone, basically a stranger, come to me that asked me, "Am I bi person?" I was really shocked, and I got recognized in London that I'm a bi person.
Wow.
And that person saying like, "Oh yeah, 'cause you've been to Dali like 30 years ago," something like that. And he was fascinated to saw a authentic Bai dress outfit on London Underground, and I just thought, actually, I should wear more. Like some people might find, might remind some people it's good memory. And
Yeah.
so yeah, I feel not as a showy outfit, but also I think I take it as my formal dress. Like if I go to occasion that ask to dress like formally, I will wear my Bai outfit, but also I will wear it for my work as well. So it's kind of a work uniform in a way. So
Yeah.
actually I do wear it more often in the UK than when I'm back to Yunnan.
That's kind of like a business suit for Westerners, isn't it? You wear it at weddings and when you go to it, when you've got important work to do.
Exactly, yeah.
And you'll buy clothing, where did you get it from? Is it something you just bought from a shop in Yunnan, or is it something you made, or is it something you inherited?
Actually, there's a few piece was, inherited from my auntie and grandma, but also so I guess that's quite good thing to talk about 'cause, even traditional clothing constantly change, and people in 'cause obviously in Bai village, they wear it every day. So,
Mm.
they will have like, instead of a wardrobe of different shirts and suit, they will have, like 10 and 20 sets of Bai costume, Bai dress. So, you can just go to like specialty shop in the Bai village to buy those Bai outfit. So I quite commonly when I go home, I will go shopping for some Bai outfit, and I tend to buy like one or two every year, so I can have a different style as well. Um, it's quite funny when I talk this to people that, traditional clothing, quite commonly people see it as a freezed image. But actually, even within the traditional clothing, it constantly changing. I was wearing something that I bought 3 years ago back to home, like last year. And my auntie was like, "Why are you still wearing the velvet fabric one? That like this is last year edition." And I was like, I'm out of fashion while wearing a traditional costume.
That's so interesting. I mean, that's a real sign of health for a style of clothing if that has that kind of seasonal fashioning and it hasn't just become like a museum piece. I guess that's a really positive sign that things can go out of fashion even when you're in that when you're operating in that paradigm.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's something I want to express to people as well is, a lot of crafts and a lot of culture, they're still alive and they're still constantly adapting and changing, evolving. It's not just like a museum piece that freeze in tradition. And that's what I'm trying to do as well, is to encourage people to see those traditional crafts a different way and feel like it's like daily life. It's not
Yeah.
just something far away, like 100 years old thing.
How is traditional clothing changing? Because obviously China's changing so quickly at the moment, and it's changed so much over the last like 10, 20 years. It seems quite strange to talk about a fashion scene when we're talking about traditional ethnic clothing, but how is it changing and how has it changed?
Wow, I guess, I mean, obviously, fashion is kind of in a way contradiction to the traditional clothing is, but I think in my concept, they actually influence to each other. Because obviously now you can see so many fashion brand that influenced by traditional crafts, traditional clothing, and even like using the elements and using the patterns and kind of extract some of the in a way that the ethnic minority style to the fashion brand. But also for the ethnic minority people, when this traditional clothing is everyday life, I find it quite interesting when I go to village to see like grandma or auntie wearing a traditional clothing, but with like a Nike shoes or have like a Adidas hat or something like that. And I just think, sometimes things are not always contradict to each other. They're actually evolving together. Um, and I think when fashion evolve and change, and traditional clothing is evolving and change at the same time, and also I've been really glad to see so many fashion brand now, and also I guess from, your previous, episode talking about the new Chinese style, new Oriental style, and I guess recently the trend about the Mandarin jacket, like, a lot big brands are using, Chinese elements and working with Chinese fashion designer. Is so I guess we're living in such interesting time that see the traditional thing become the fashion thing. And also at the same time, those fashion things is also kind of daily life in those traditional sort of setting. But yeah.
And how do you generally dress when you're in Dali? Like, what do you normally wear?
I always have something that is traditional made. So even just like a bag or a shirt or something like indigo dyed, or I do always try to, because obviously I am my brand myself, so I do wear some our items, and also I do wear like handmade stuff. But quite commonly, I will combine with, like a trainer, or a sun hat, like, because obviously UV is very strong in the Dali, in Yunnan. So it's quite hard to balance the tradition, because even when you see the traditional Bai lady, now they know the UV destroy their skin, they will put a big sun hat on top of their headdress, and that's hilarious. It's really fun to
Yeah.
see this kind of combination. So yeah, I guess I'm also really like a mixed tradition and let's say contemporary way to my daily dress.
Something I really want to kind of hear your thoughts on is you mentioned that you sometimes worry that people think you're cosplaying. And I think it's really interesting to think about the distinction between when clothing's just your clothing and when it becomes a costume. Because obviously on one end of the extreme, you've got the women in the village who always wear Bai clothing and that's just what they wear every day. And then on the other end of the extreme, if you go to like an ethnic area in China, quite often you can hire the clothing and you can go and take your photographs and then you give it back at the end of the day. And that's very clearly just a costume. And how do you see that distinction? And where do you feel that you fit on that spectrum?
That's a quite good one. And also this is a topic that I constantly to how to say like dig into to understand as well. Because yeah, you mentioned about you can hire this costume and wear it, and it's kind of the most I guess the new way to travel in Yunnan now. And to be honest with you, that even the ethnic minority people, like my friends themselves, when they visit other village, they will also hire, even though they are biased minority, they might to hire like a E minority stuff and
Yeah.
their own to take some photos. And that really kind of made me wonder, like, is it wrong to just experience other people's clothing? I mean, obviously, um, it's not like yeah, I guess, when you try on, it's become the costume rather than everyday clothing. But I do see, I guess I do see two sides of this kind of phenomenon, currently so big in China. They call them like Disney princess. That's the way. Yeah. People want to escape from reality and to become one day Disney princess in this whatever ethnic minority clothing, and they feel like they experience the culture better in that way, like they put in their dress. I guess there's a saying in English, like, you put in someone's shoe, that you understand the life of that minority, and in that way I think, it's so positive thing that they're able to uh understand the culture, rather than just watching but actually using body to experience it. But I guess there's also the how to say, not the not the bad side, but I guess, the side effects of things, that a lot of costumes are not as authentic as they should be. And sometimes it I mean, even in UK, while I working in my business, so we run fashion shows as well, than we did in the Kew Garden actually. And I do worry that people see them as a beautiful clothing, as a costume, and not understanding the significance behind the clothing. So, for a lot of business in China running this, we call them 旅拍, like I guess a travel photo shoot. They don't really care about the meaning of the clothing. They would just get a pretty picture and that's enough. So I guess, it takes time to um let this kind of business grow, and then maybe more people will focus on not just about taking the photo but also to understand the process of the clothing and also the meaning of the clothing. Um, but I guess, everything starts, I think, starts from a positive way, but they will have side effects come with them. Um, but yeah, I would say I kind of see more and more young people talking about we shouldn't just put up the clothing and then take some photo and that's it. You actually should you can wear the costume, but I guess, to understanding it is more important.
Just on that issue about ethnic minority clothing and like the use of it just as a costume for almost like dressing up in. How do you feel about that just on a personal level?
I guess I think it depends on how they dressed up. And also I think because obviously there's a lot of stereotype way of ethnic minority look as well. So it's really like a fine line. It's really gray area. I personally think it's fine you dress up as long as you respect to the culture and I mean hopefully you understand the clothing you're wearing. Because sometimes you might find like people dress up, they don't even know what clothing they're wearing. And so yeah, because I feel like things changing and I feel like actually it's a positive thing that people want to know more about as minority culture and the clothes. As long as you know understand what you're doing, then that's fine.
Yeah. Earlier, you mentioned that your family weren't so sure about you going into this business. How do they feel about it now? Are they surprised that there's been so much interest in this kind of traditional culture in London? What do they think of it now?
I think I mean, now they are really 100% supporting me. I mean, I would say 200% supporting me. But I guess, it was a really I think there was a moment that really touched me was, because after COVID, I also started the thing I really wanted to do is to bring people back to Yunnan to actually learn the craft from those ladies and aunts and grandmas who taught me at the first. And I think I really want the connection between because when I teach in London, why I created the e-crafts in London is actually they see Yunnan through my eyes rather than to because I would say there will be some, my personal experience about how Yunnan to me, I kind of interpret it in London. So I kind of want them to see them in their own eyes one day. I mean, obviously, not everyone can do that, but at least I can provide this opportunity. So I started around textile and crafts trip, especially focus on those crafts in 2024, and we had two trips so far. And when the people see my grandma and see my auntie, I wasn't expecting that people they would cry like not just my customer but also my grandma and auntie. They had this connection so long even they didn't see each other before, but there was a person that saw my grandma and then she was saying that I know I was doing e-crafts workshop since lockdown, and then I wanted to see this grandma behind this for 4 years, and now finally I can meet you in person. Even though they can't speak same language, but my grandma can feel that passion, and then my auntie was like, people flying, 800 kilometers away just come to learn this craft. They really feel respected. And I think I really did something that to me is a bit meaningful is this kind of full circle moment. Because when the village people really feel they've been respected with their crafts, they will passing on this kind of techniques. Because I do had this question in my mind how people continue this kind of crafts when in the future we're all talking about AI, we're all talking about technology, like how does thing continue? And I think I find a way out of it. It's this human connection, the human touch that technology can never replace. And when those village people really feel being respected, they see what great work they've been doing, they will pass on like in their heart, rather than, I mean, obviously have economic, like, how to say, like, even though I help them to sell their stuff in the UK, and they get money by it, it will boost the confidence of the crafts and boost the continue of the passing the crafts. But I don't feel like it's a long-term game if they not feel being respected just by this doing the crafts. So I would say that was the moment that I really enjoyed what I've been doing for 7 years.
That's so interesting and so lovely to hear that how that's come full circle like that. It kind of leads on to my next question, because for a lot of people in the West, Chinese clothing has become associated with stuff like Temu and Shein, where the creator is almost invisible and the clothing itself is disposable by design. But when we talk about craft, we often re-emphasize the actual process of creating an item and the role of the creator and the meaning of the object. Is that something that's important to your work?
Yeah, definitely. I always saying, like, object without the maker is it's basically meaningless. And we always wanted to do is to give the voice back to the maker and to see how important those makers are as well. So we're always trying to tell the story behind each object. So like I mentioned earlier, like clothing's not just a pretty thing, but also it contains someone's life, part of their life is spending on to making this clothing. So I think it is, you know, worth to know that who made your clothes. Someone probably spent not but sometime maybe a few months, but a few weeks. But even, someone spent a few weeks or few months time to making a piece of clothing for you that you are wearing it. For me, I feel like, nowadays we just take granted. We go to, Primark or whatever, Zara, H&M, like you just buy a t-shirt, buy a jean that you kind of just thought they just kind of appeared in your life, but there's always a person behind each item. That's something I want to kind of tell people as well. And we talk about fast fashion for so many years, how we solve that problem overproducing in this world. And that's the reason why my brand focus on the crafts workshop as well, is because I feel there's enough brands out there, fashion brands out there. I don't want to create more waste on this planet, and I want the people really understanding how things are made in the modern society, even though people might think this is a useless skill. But actually, when one of the button fall off on your shirt or one of the zip broken, it's actually pretty easy to fix it if you know some basic skill. And also, when people understand this process behind it, they will not throw away easily. They suddenly treasure these things much more if they made themselves. So I think, obviously there's a lot like, organic materials, there's recycled materials, there's talking about the technology of inventing um, materials, and also secondhand clothing, stuff like that. But I think in the roots of this is to make people, especially modern like society, that we forgot how things been made. That is actually quite concerning thing. Like for me, how strawberry grow, how the fruit that we eat is different. Back the old days we kind of used to wait for things, but now we just wanted to now. Like doesn't matter the nature cycle is, we just want it now. And then we forgot. I think the beauty of wait is something we kind of forgotten in our modern society. So that's something I really want people to slow down. Um, even in London, this busy place, we spend the whole day in the workshop to just learn something simple with your hands, um, and to create that connections. I mean, we had three words for our slogan, which is craft, culture, and slow living, and that's pretty much says about it.
And those trips to Yunnan, that's something you're still arranging, and is that something you're going to do in the future?
Yes, we are doing it every year at the moment. It's kind of a reoccurring event and a really personal project for me as well. Especially my mom and dad was the first group of English tour guide back to 1980s.
Wow.
So it's kind of another thing that runs in the blood, I guess. When and this project actually was doing with me and my mom together. People will stay in my family hotel run by my mom, and they will go to my family courtyard, have food with my family. It's really about again, we probably talk so much about negative of tourism, but I do want to bring back this most pure, organic, raw human connection to to our trip, to the way to visit Yunnan. And my mom was so happy about that she felt it's kind of back to 30 years ago. She was this young, by like kind of dressing by a costume and taking hippies, backpackers around Yunnan, and then she felt like it's such a precious moment for her every time when people come visit Yunnan with my crafts trip. She didn't see it as like a commercial tour, but more as a way to making friends and the talking about stories. So right now we are doing like Dali textile tour, but also we are expanding to a different part of Yunnan. Like we go up to Lijiang and Lugu Lake to Moso people. We are visiting this year in September. But yeah, we will be offering probably one or two tours every year.
And that next tour is in September. And is there still space available if people are interested?
Yes, there are still space available.
Perfect. And if listeners would like to find out more about your work, where would you recommend they start?
I would say our website would be a most kind of full information. So it's literally ecrafts.com. That's the way to find all our work. But if you're on the social media, we have Instagram called eCrafts London, and also for Chinese social media, we have the Little Red Book 小红书 called eCrafts London, and as well as 微信视频号 also called eCrafts London as well.
Perfect. Yiran, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
That was Yiran Duan from eCrafts. If you would like to learn about the clothing of China's ethnic majority, you can listen to episode 2 in this series, entitled Hanfu, a Movement. In the show description, you'll find links to the topics we discussed here. The Society for Anglo-Chinese Understanding is a charity which has worked to promote understanding and friendship between the British and Chinese people since 1965. If you would like to find out more or get involved, visit sacu.org. If there are any other topics you would like to hear this podcast discuss, or if you have any feedback, please contact us via the email address in the show description. The music is Chopin's Grand Valse Brûlante, Opus number 18, produced by Gregor Quendel and released under a Creative Commons license. This podcast was written, produced, and edited by me, Joseph Edmonds.